What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am one armed madman, and with me today we've got Nate Blevens. Nate, it's a pleasure to have you. How are we doing today?
Oh, doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Excellent. We had a little bit of a technical issue going on this morning, but I think we're going to be all right moving forward. So yeah, great. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank
How
you.
did you become a writer? When did you get into writing? Like, is this something you always been into, or got into it
Honestly, it
later?
came out of the blue like a T-bone accident. But basically, during COVID, with all the lockdowns that occurred and everything, I was just kind of sitting back waiting for, a whole bunch of people to start making stuff that I was going to enjoy. And then nobody was making it. And I was like, well, what are my kids, into at the moment? And all the stuff that they were into was the stuff I grew up with because I wasn't a big fan of what was being made for kids either. So I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time to make my own. So I took the stuff that I loved from the 80s and 90s and I kind of meshed it all into my book, The Steradian Gate, and been writing sequels ever since.
Very cool, man. Yeah, I used to watch a lot of TV. I've always been a big sci-fi guy. Like that's the stuff that I was into growing up. My dad had me watching Alien and, Terminator
Oh,
and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Predator, like we were a big Arnold household, so,
Classic.
anything made by Arnold, sci-fi, we were always into that type of stuff. And it seems like in the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, Hollywood has really gotten bad with
Yeah.
all types of movies and shows. They seem to just be getting worse and worse. They're recycling the same stories over and over again. And, it's not great. I watched
Yeah.
a good series on Netflix the other day. Every once in a while, like I try and keep up on the newer sci-fi that I feel is worth watching at least because I like to, keep up on it for the podcast and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I watched it was season 4 of Love, Death and Robots on Netflix, which was pretty good. There was a couple of them. They're like short animated mostly. Um just little short, like 7 to 10, 15 minute little vignettes, I guess you would call them. And they were pretty decent. But it's amazing to me that with all of the talented people writing books out there, that they're not capable of making something a little bit more entertaining.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so like when I started writing this, a lot of my expectations was I want Indiana Jones, Uncharted, Resident Evil, all that stuff that I loved growing up in a book, but something that can be read by a middle schooler and parents don't have to worry about the content. It was that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a tough ask to get something also that, the parents are not gonna mind reading to their kid along with,
yeah,
because a lot of times, parents will get into a kid's book and it's like, "All right, this is kind of freaking boring," and I don't really wanna read it to them. Where, like, I remember as a kid, um, my sister was really into Harry Potter, and they
oh
picked up
yeah,
the book on tape while we went on vacation one time, and nobody was really fired up about listening to it. Me and my dad were not fired up about some wizard story, that we were gonna have to
hmm,
listen to for 10 hours on the way back and forth from my grandparents' place. And wasn't bad. Wasn't bad at
yeah,
all. It was entertaining enough, and I wish that I knew as a kid that there was a lot of great sci-fi out there, some of the stuff that I was interested in, and, like, they made stuff like that was good for adults and kids. Like, one of my favorite
hmm,
authors is Larry Niven, who
okay,
kind of wrote for everybody in a way. Like, his books were digestible by younger kids and also entertaining for adults, and I think that's a tough line to walk as a writer.
oh definitely. My absolute favorite writer, God rest his soul, is Michael Crichton.
Yeah, he's good.
He got me into reading primarily, and it started, of course, with Jurassic Park. But I ended up collecting and reading all of his works, not his earlier John Lang ones, but like the primary Crichton novels. The only one I haven't read yet is got to be the newest one, Eruption, and that's because it was also James Patterson that wrote it. He kind of finished it up for him. But I would say that I'm keeping that for a rainy day because I expect it's going to be the last book with Crichton's name on it. And as he's my favorite author, I was just kind of like,
Yeah, it's
just kind
tough.
of save this one,
It's tough.
save it.
Yeah, I haven't listened to, I'm wearing an Ozzy Osbourne sweatshirt right now, and he's my
Mhm.
favorite, and I have not watched his final concert. I just can't get myself to do it. I've seen clips of it on the internet, but I just can't get myself to sit down and watch it. It's one of those things where
It gives you
it's
something to
tough.
look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
because there'll
Um,
always be something from your favorite to look forward to that way.
yeah, so what are some of your favorite Crichton books?
Obviously, Jurassic Park is at the top. I would say Timeline was really interesting, and Congo was a big one. He's had a couple of ones that were like pretty boring, like Airframe. Um, I used to fly over to my uncle's and visit him occasionally, and I was reading Airframe at the time. And the passenger next to me is like, "What are you reading there?" And I showed him, "Oh yeah, it's Airframe by Michael Crichton." And he's like, "What's it about?" And I'm like, "Oh, plane crashes." And we're on a plane, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah,
Freaking out.
I haven't read a lot of Crichton. I've read Jurassic
Hmm.
Park and, a couple other ones that I can't remember right now, but I know I've read a couple other ones. I haven't
Yeah.
read Congo. I have seen the movie, and the movie wasn't bad, you know? It was
Hmm.
definitely not up there with Jurassic Park, but it was
Yeah.
still worth watching, I think. That was fun, the white apes, you know?
Oh yeah. Sphere was also a really good one. I enjoyed
Oh,
Sphere.
Sphere's a great movie too. I
Oh
haven't
yeah.
read Sphere either. I have a hard time reading books where I've seen the movie first. Now I try and read the book first and then watch the movie. I think it's better that way personally. So like
Hmm.
I'm excited for the new Andy Weir book movie to come out here in a couple months. I'm drawing a blank on what it's. I didn't get a ton of sleep last night. For the audience, I
No
already
worries.
told you off the podcast, but Project Hail Mary, it's called, which was a really
Oh
good
yeah,
book.
I haven't read that one yet.
It's a really good book. It's a fun
Nice.
read. Like he's a great writer, and interesting story actually, from The Martian. I've haven't read The Martian because again, like I kind of got into reading audiobooks after I saw that movie, so I haven't like gone
Oh yeah.
back to that. And I don't know how much different the book is in the movie, but I remember hearing that he wrote that book in a serialized fashion on Substack. So he would write
Oh.
a chapter and then he would send it out and the people that were subscribed to his Substack would go through it, and a lot of them had like very technical backgrounds, so they go through technical aspects of the book and go, this is wrong, that's wrong, change it to this and that, and then he would update it and go on to the
Nice.
next one. And it was kind of like in a lot of ways a crowdsourced book, which is kind of cool because
That's
it turned
fantastic
out
though.
to be such a major hit of a book and a movie.
Yeah. No, that sounds fantastic. That getting that feedback like in real time per chapter almost.
Yeah, because
That'd be fantastic.
it's such a technical book, and I know
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of people like don't like technical books like that, but I really dig technical aspects to the books a lot of the times.
Hmm.
Like, especially for someone like I'm into space operas and I want to know how your spaceship operates. I want to know how
Yeah.
your, time machine operates. Like I want to see how much time you and research you put into this aspect of your story, and like I'm curious to know how it works. And I guess a lot of people aren't like that, but for me, like that's some of the
Hmm.
more interesting parts of the story.
Oh, definitely. So I actually decided. So on the front of my book, of the first book, you'll see the device that he inherits, and I decided to make it.
Oh, cool.
It doesn't actually open up portals to other dimensions, but
I was gonna say it looks like
it
a Stargate.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. This is supposed to be the size that it actually is in the book too. And you just kind of twist this around and make sure that the proper symbol is up there. And you put in a glyph combination, and that opens up the portal to whichever of the dimensions you're going to visit. But in book two, I decided how does this actually work?
Yeah.
And so I delved into like quantum dynamics, to give an idea of the anti-gravity that is felt like when they're getting ready to shift through the dimensions, and like what would be the cause of that. And so I delved into that pretty hard. It was a bit of a headache, but it
Yeah.
was very much worth it at the end because it just made the book that much better to understand. And then as I'm writing book three, I'm like, all right, now how did they build it initially? And so we're going to visit that aspect of how these came to be in book three. So,
Very cool. And I like that you're, going through time with the book and showing how it's done. Like I like one of the book I'm reading right now, I'm not super into. Like it's like book 3 of a 4-book series, and these things are like 40 hours long. It's a long audiobook. It's Peter F. Hamilton. And
mm,
you don't get a lot of information throughout the book. It's a lot of different storylines that are kind of hard to keep track of,
oh,
especially when you're only listening to an hour or 2 a night. So, and every time you think you've got all the storylines down, he opens up another one. And
hmm,
within, we're in the 3rd 40-hour book, we still haven't really learned all that much, and
oh no,
it's kind of getting to the point where I'm not really wanting to listen to it all that much anymore, and I'm getting less
mm,
and less done of it each night, and it kinda, to me, it was a bad choice. It's too many storylines, too many characters, and, like, I like a good character, but when you have
yeah,
so many characters, it's kind of hard to develop a relationship with the main character or characters, you know what I mean? Because you're
yeah. When you're
just
spending too
dealing with.
much time on the side characters.
Yeah, exactly, and I wouldn't even know who the main character in this book is, It's
Oh, oh
it's
no,
that it's that bad, like, I kind of get who it's supposed to be, but
yeah,
it's so diluted to the point where it's like you could easily mistake this guy as just another one of the characters, and
oh
there's
no,
nobody that I really have, like, an affinity to in the book because
hmm,
everybody's so debaucherous and disgusting, Even the main character who's supposed to be kind of the hero of the story knocked up a 15-year-old girl, and it's like, I have a hard time liking this guy, you know?
yeah,
I have
yeah,
a really hard time liking this guy when he's, in our day and age, like, this takes place in the 2600s, but, like, in our day and age, this guy's a pedophile, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. There's a place for them.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not a starship.
Hmm.
So,
Oh man,
what are some of the other, aspects to your book? Like, I don't want you to give away the story, like, I want people
sure.
to go out and buy the book, but, how did you kinda think through like, in post-apocalyptic fiction, people have to survive some way, so how did you kinda figure out, like, "Okay, this is how we're gonna survive. This is how we're gonna maybe generate energy." Like, kinda give us some details of the world that you're building.
Sure. So it's actually going to be multiple dimensions. There's going to be five that you visit throughout the entire series, and each one we're going to have a focus on each of those dimensions. So in book one, we're going to be visiting Lunaria, and it is a world that is technologically a century behind us. So think 1920s to 40s, but World War II and one never actually happened really. There was
Okay.
a great war that they allude to. They have bunkers that have been built for it, but that was well before. That would have been like middle 1800s. And the way they have their society built is you have the main city, Heraldrin, that's sort of like the capital of this particular country called Meraldi. And the further away you get from Heraldrin, it's almost like going back in time. So you go all the way far away from it, and you're like maybe 1600s technology. And as you get closer and closer, you get up to about the 1930s in technology, but they're still a century behind us.
Oh, okay.
So they don't have the technology to kind of defend themselves against a hostile force from another dimension called the Creever Resterna. And the Creever Resterna are going in and basically enslaving everyone that they can and taking over because they see that opportunity. In book two, we're going to visit Alchemilla, And how that's set up, it's more or less like the Pacific Northwest, because that's where I grew up. I had a blast growing up there with all the adventures as a kid. But instead of like going and exploring space like we did here, they're going to be more focused on underwater adventures, deep sea exploration. You're going to have underwater laboratories, etc. So that's going to be the focus there. Do you remember the show Sequest
Yeah,
back in the 90s?
I do.
Yeah, there was some inspiration from Sequest in this. So it's been a lot of fun to kind of be able to move back and forth. And just because we're visiting Alchemilla doesn't mean we ignore what's happening in Lunaria in book two. Like there's going to be some back and forth with what's going on and how the characters interact with each other.
So let me how do I word this? Is in your mind, is there a difference between an alternate dimension and like an alternate universe? Are these kind of like layers of
It's
reality versus a multiverse?
it's kind of like a multiverse, but instead of what you would see in a lot of modern sci-fi, where there's like multiples of each of us in each of those, like that movie, the one with Jet Li,
Mhm.
that's not going to be the case here. It's not going to be there's multiples of everybody. There's only one of everybody, and that's because the smallest bit of difference in the history of that dimension will have altered all sorts of everyone's genetics to the point where the odds of that person being born again are almost nil.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. I've never really liked the multiverse theory that's kind of used most in popular fiction, where
Hmm.
every decision you make spins off a new universe. So there's like in that movie, with Jet Li with the one,
Yeah.
there's an infinite amount of you in these different universes essentially. And I've always liked the idea of infinite universes, but universes that could be completely different, something
Hmm.
where gravity maybe doesn't have the same strength or electromagnetism is different or, whatever.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different laws to nature and laws to reality, but if you did truly live in an infinite universe, or an infinite multiverse, I guess in this case, there would still be infinite amounts of Earths that are just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit different than yours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have always found that to be interesting because infinity is such a weird concept, right? Like it's
Oh
something
yeah.
that we can't really get our heads around. So even if there's, very few universes that are like ours. I mean, one in, trillions or however, big of a number you want to make. There's still an
Oh yeah.
infinite amount that are going to be just a couple of atoms off. And I find that to be interesting. Hey, there could even be a universe where your book is real.
There you go.
I guess that's kind of how probabilities work with that. What are some
Yeah.
of the like works of fiction that you were more into aside from like Crichton growing up? Like what got you kind of in going in the direction of post apocalyptic and different dimensions and stuff like that? Where'd you get the inspiration for this type of stuff?
Honestly, while I enjoyed Crichton, I wasn't a huge reader growing up. Like
No.
most of my time was spent on like Star Trek: The Next Generation and like the Stargate movie, not the show, but the movie.
Yep.
All sorts of sci-fi and movies, TV, etc. That was kind of my story-driven content for the longest time. And then I got huge into gaming, probably around the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo days, until about the PS4 generation. And just to see the way that they had narratives woven into the way the games would work was fantastic. Modern gaming took a really big hit with the current generation of systems, in my opinion, just in both storytelling, content wise, and the way things are presented. But it seems like they might be having some kind of a comeback now. Well, we'll see. But I would say primarily it's been video game and movie and TV oriented ideas, but that's where my passion was. And I was like, all right, now how can I bring all this stuff that I loved growing up into the modern world, make it unique, and make it so that both middle school and then all the way through adulthood can enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started. And it took me, I want to say, 2 years to world build Lunaria. So, and how everything was going to be kind of meshing together.
I was not really into video games growing up, and, I think we're probably around the same age. I'm 39 and be 40 in another month or so.
Yeah,
But it just wasn't my thing. I was into riding dirt bikes, and I was out on my bike during the day, having
that's
fun with my
fantastic.
buddies. Yeah, like, I just never really got into them. And then when I was in my probably early 20s, my buddies got into, like, Xbox. One of my
Oh,
buddies
yeah.
had an Xbox, and they were always playing Halo, and I would watch it, and I'd be like, "Man, this looks so fun." Like, the graphics are
Hmm.
so cool, and, like, everything about this game looks so cool. And then I'd try and play it, and I'd just be like,
All over the place.
yeah, spinning
Yep.
around in circles, and I would just get frustrated and throw the freaking controller down, and I couldn't do it. And
Oh, yeah.
finally, like, one night, me and my buddy, we might have been on some illegal substances. Sorry, my dog's going nuts. And, we just plugged the game in and started playing it, and, like, we went through the whole campaign, and we're just going nuts, and having a great time. And I remember I was so into it. I'm, like, on the edge of my seat, and I finally, like, lost all my lives, and I'm like, "What happened? What do I do? Like, how's are we done?" And I went
Hmm.
out the next day and bought an Xbox and, played a lot of Halo for a few
Oh, yeah.
years, and I got into this game called, Titanfall, which I thought was great. It was a super cool, like, game where
The
you could,
4v1.
yeah, yeah, so you could
Hmm.
have this, like, big robot, and then you could also be your pilot. So they had to build these, levels, like, I don't know what they would call it, maps. They had to build these maps that were capable of being, you know, controlled, or, like, capable of, like, sustaining a giant robot, but also being able to be navigated by, like, a small person, and they had you, like, running on walls and stuff. And I thought, "Man, this is so cool," like, compared to movies. And at this point, I was already starting to think that movies were starting to suck. Like, me and my buddy would go out to the movies and watch, like, sci-fi and stuff like that, and I was already starting to think it sucked. And, I it was I haven't really played video games since I've got hurt. I've been saying for a while that I'd like to try the, like, Xbox adaptive controller where they give you,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
access to these buttons and stuff like that. I just haven't done it. It seems like a big investment for something that I may or may not enjoy doing. And,
True.
the cool thing about video games, though, is, like, the narrative for movies forever, as I was a kid and even into a young adult, like, they were saying, like, movies are gonna get better and cheaper because, technology's getting better and CGI is gonna be cheaper and it'll be easier to make all of these graphics and blah, 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 blah. But that hasn't really happened. Like, the movies have gotten more expensive to make, like, a lot more expensive to make, even though the
Oh, yeah.
technology is a lot cheaper and more readily available. Like, it just hasn't, inflation is one thing, but also everything just gets more expensive. That's kind of the nature of the movie industry for some reason. And,
Oh, yeah.
like, it hasn't happened. I when I saw the last Avatar movie, and I thought, like, man, as a younger kid, like, I enjoyed the first one. I thought the graphics were insane, and, like, I didn't, the story was whatever, but, like, I was kind of enamored by the CGI of it, the world building
Yeah.
and the characters and that type of thing. And by the second one, I was like, "This sucks. This is stupid. It's the same movie." The change of, and by this time, I knew a little bit more about, like, fiction and writing, and I'm like, The writing's awful in this." Like, the change event happened in the last 5 minutes of a 3-hour movie. Like, you can't do that. You're not giving the audience anything, essentially. You're just,
Hmm.
using this as a 3-hour preview for the next movie, essentially, which is lame. And,
Yeah.
I kind of got a lot of shit even but from some people on the podcast when I said, like, I think that this is peak CGI for the near future. Like, we'll see another couple Avatar movies, I'm sure. He'll probably finish out the series because, it's the guy's got enough juice in Hollywood to where they're gonna give him the money to make these movies regardless of what they're bringing in. But, like,
Oh yeah.
people aren't really going to the movie theaters anymore. Like, COVID kind
Yeah.
of killed that. So, how is it, that another director, producer is gonna get $1 billion or more to create a movie that nobody's going to watch? And, like, I read a great book years ago. There's a TV show, based off of it now called The Three Body Problem, and I'm like, "Man, this is such a good book." Like, it's just so interesting, and China came out with a series of it first, and they did
Hmm.
a 22 episode series. And then America produced their own version of it, and they did 8 episodes. And the Chinese version was cheaper than the American version. And it's just like, this is unsustainable. How is it that
Yeah.
China can make this with just as good a graphics, They're clearly not paying the actors as much, I would imagine, but, like, the graphics and the CGI are just as good, maybe even better in some of the scenes. So, like,
Hmm.
how is it that they are capable of producing a 22 episode season for cheaper than we're able to do an 8? And it's not by accident, I don't think. And, like, I just don't see us really going much deeper than we are now. I'm hoping that, like, with artificial intelligence, that we're going to allow people like you to create your own live action or animated version of your book that, you can have a link to a YouTube channel within, the index of your book, and people can afterwards go and, like, see a live action version, maybe even a 5 or 7 minute version of, like, each chapter, which I think would be super cool.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the I have not yet delved into AI manipulation and all that, but I can see that definitely being something that's done in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Tell me a little bit more about how you got into writing this book. I know you said that you kind of wanted to bring in stuff that you were interested in the past, but there had to have been, inspiration behind some of the characters, or these, based on people that you know in your real life.
So, yeah, actually, it's kind of a so we're starting off by meeting Ethan when he inherits the artifact, and Ethan is actually a representation of my son, and he is granted in his early 20s in the book. And when I started writing this, my son was like 6. So
Yeah.
there was some extrapolation there on what he would act like. And funny enough, he's actually begun the real Ethan being very much like his fictional counterpart in many ways. So the Burke family is basically my son and all of my family as they would be in 15 years, hypothetically. That's assuming my daughters end up in the careers that they wanted, and everything starts to kind of smooth out in reality, and all that jazz. Um, and then I would take certain characters and be like, well, I'd really like some of these certain other character aspects that I've seen in some other shows, and bring that in. So you'll see some of the aspects that I gave Ethan isn't just Uncharted or Indiana Jones or anything like that. It's going to be like a little bit of Mission Impossible and a little bit of those kind of ideas and those thought processes brought into the character. Um, for some of the Lunarian resistance, I have kind of some World War II kind of ideas that were brought in for, I want to say, like, there's the map person, and then there's going to be the resistance leader, and that kind of stuff. It's almost like like the same ideas that you would see with a John Connor for the character Fletcher,
Hmm.
and whatnot. So there's a lot of this overlapping in character development, but I wanted to make it my own.
Yeah.
So
My
yeah, there's definitely some overlay with real people versus fictional characters that I've used as examples.
my grandfather used to tell me and my sister stories when we would go and visit him. And it was a fantasy series that he kind of came up with. And he never wrote any of it down, which is a total bummer because it would make for
Hmm.
a great, like, children's fantasy series about, like, a dog and a butterfly that were adopted by a prince and lived in a palace and went on adventures. And I always remember thinking, like, how does he come up with this crap? 'Cause he would have a, we'd pressure him to do a different story every night we were there, and he would just sit down on the bed at night and, tell these stories verbally to us, off the cuff. And I always thought, like, God, this guy is so talented to be able to do
Mhm.
that. And like, I don't know how you would just be able to come up with these things. But as like I've gotten into becoming a writer, it's almost like in some ways you live within the world that you're building, and a lot of times it just comes out of you, you know? Like, my main
Yeah.
character is based off of myself. We have the same background up to the change event in the book, essentially, where
Mhm.
there's like a big EMP that knocks out the power and, you know, sends us basically back to the Stone Age. And then you've got also this breakaway civilization that makes itself known and kind of establishes a massive city in San Francisco, out of the ruins and the ashes of the fallen civilization. And like I lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, so it's kind of a way to explore how the city has changed. And a lot of times, like you think, like, how am I going to do this or that? But as soon as you start writing that aspect, like the next event just kind of presents itself without you even having to try. That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I found that, while now I'm in book 3, I found that the characters have kinda taken on a life of their own, and based on the qualities I gave them in the 1st and 2nd books, they're kinda writing themselves almost. Like, they've taken
Yeah.
over, and I'm like, "Oh, I wanna make them do this scene, and I want them to act out this way," and it's like, "Oh, no, 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 they wouldn't act out that way. They've gotta act this way, and this is how the the scene should play out, really," but it's a little bit different. You don't think that it's just going to happen, but it's like watching the movie in your head, and you're just kind of writing it down. It's weird, but that's kind of how it plays out sometimes.
Yeah. You ever have like dreams where you find yourself in the world?
Yes, and oftentimes I will wake up and I'll be like, okay, that needs to be written down somewhere before I forget it.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Hmm.
As we were kind of talking earlier, like modern day movies and TV have kind of fallen, you know, pretty far down a nasty hole of being ridiculous and kind of
Yeah.
repeated IP that it seems like people are incapable or unwilling to, create something new. And like I really enjoyed the new Dune movies. I thought Dune 1 and Dune 2 were really good. I thought the guy did a
Okay.
great job at like capturing the book, and like it's such a heady book. Like Dune, I didn't expect, because like the David Lynch version of Dune is so weird and just kind of like crazy that I didn't expect the book to be the way it was. When I read the book, I'm like, "Oh wow, this is like completely different." Like the bare bones of the story is there, but like the characters are different, especially Paul, like is a lot different. And it's such like a heady book that delves into like some of the major issues of like freedom and power and control and lust and just all of these amazing, themes that resonate throughout the entire series of books. That it's
Hmm.
just the guy is such a talented writer, and it seems like that would be such a rich IP to keep building, and I don't know why it would take so long to delve into that. And like I've read so many other books that are like just so rich within character development and world building and technology aspects of them. A lot of them, these guys like have very expensive imaginations, so I can see why it's been hard to bring them to the big screen. But have you seen anything, new in the past couple of years that you can kind of recommend to people that you think is any good?
Ooh. Um. Man, I have yet to see a whole lot of movies. Um. Man, what was the last movie I saw?
It's
The
tough.
last Mission Impossible wasn't bad.
No,
Like,
it
it was,
wasn't.
if you take it as a wrap up to everything that happened before, like if you're a Mission Impossible fan, you've been paying attention to all the movies, then everything makes perfect sense on how they wrap it up in that film.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a great job there.
Yeah.
So I would say probably that was the last one that I could be like, okay, yeah, that was actually done really well. Like I went and saw the new Jurassic movie because I was a huge
Ugh.
Jurassic Park fan, and I was a bit disappointed.
Yeah. The one with, like,
It wasn't as
the big mutant at the end, like, I was not into that movie.
I I called him Derposaurus.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good name for him. Like, yeah,
Yep.
I watched that just a couple of weeks ago, and I was not into it. I was like, "This is kind of a bastardization," and it's like, you're running out of stories that you can tell within that IP, and it's time to move on to
Exactly.
something different. Like, if you wanna do a story about dinosaurs, great, like, have somebody go back in time, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that can happen. You don't
Oh yeah.
have to redo the same old it's because they wanna be able to advertise that it's Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
essentially. Like, that's the only reason that they're going into it. It's kinda dumb. Like, I think the last movie that I watched was Predator: Killer of Killers, and like I said earlier in the show, like, Predator is one of the great sci-fi movies, like
Yeah.
Arnold versus the Predator. It was so good, like, some of it was believable, some of it wasn't, but it was good enough to where you didn't really poke holes in the story because you didn't need to. It was just a good movie, you know? And now,
Mhm.
like, it's really suffered from villain decay. Like, these predators are supposed to be these badass 12-foot tall aliens that hunt
Yeah.
people and, like, hunt other, civilizations, and they've kind of lost their luster. They really suffer hard from villain decay. Like, the last one, this Predator Killers of Killers, which was kind of like an anime version of Predator where you had 3 different storylines that come together at the end, and all 3 of these characters kill a predator in one way or another, and it's like an hour and 20-minute long movie, so, essentially, like, you're
Wait, are
ki
these human characters that kill a predator?
yeah, 3 of them. One of them's a woman, and, like, the last Predator movie before that, Prey, you've got a 110-pound woman who kills a predator, and, like, in this one, you had 3 predators die within, like, an hour, and it's gotten to the point where these things aren't scary anymore. They're not realistic anymore. Like,
Yeah.
they're killing these things in 15 minutes each, and they're doing it very, very easily, which to me is lame. Like, you could have a movie where the predator wins. Like, the main character doesn't always have to win. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be that way. Maybe they, kill each other at the end or something, and the predator kills everybody, and aside from I don't know. It's just gotten to the point where I feel like the IP is tapped out, and it's just
Yeah.
time to move on to something different. And I don't know what keeps them from taking the chance on new IP. It just doesn't make any sense.
The only thing that I got for that is that they won't chance new IPs because it's unproven, and so they think they have a better shot at making their millions by just rehashing name brands. That's the only thing I got, but I'm hoping
But
that they're
like,
learning it's
yeah,
not
but like,
working.
meanwhile, The Expanse did freaking great. That was a great show, and that was an really an unheard of book at the time. Like, it was a
Mhm.
popular book within a small, sliver of the population in the sci-fi community, but like, this wasn't a book that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Transcended, genres where there's
Mhm.
certain books that kind of like Harry Potter. People who had
Yeah.
never read Jesus, I've misused
No
that word
worries.
like 3 different times in the podcast already. People who have never read a fantasy book in their life read Harry Potter. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Like, you didn't have to be a fantasy fan to get into that. Michael Crichton, you didn't have to be a sci-fi fan to get into that. Like, these
Mhm.
were books that kind of transcended their their genres, where, like, The Expanse didn't do that, and it turned out to be a really good show. And, of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
they ended it before the end of the books, which is a bummer because you would like to see that, entire series carried out to its fulfillment, and, I don't know why they canceled it. I think it had something to do with money, or I really don't know because Sci-Fi, the channel kind of went out of business, and the IP was
Yeah.
bought by Amazon because Jeff Bezos was a fan of the show, and it's like, dude, you've got so much money that you're building rockets for fun at this point. So, like, can we please just finish the series?
Right? Right? Do something. Oh. One of the sci-fi video game series that I really love, Mass Effect, is
Mm,
being made by Amazon now.
yeah.
Um, like I would normally be holding my breath and hoping that nothing bad happens to it, but I actually have a bit of hope that it'll be okay based on the Fallout TV series.
Yeah, I
Like
enjoyed
I was
Fallout. It's been good so far.
I was worried that Fallout would end up being horrible, and they were like, no, we're not going to do the main character or whatever. We're going to do our own thing. Granted, Fallout games didn't really have a specific character, but they kind of did their own thing with it within the universe, and it turned out fantastic.
I heard
So
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so if that's the way they're going to do it with Mass Effect, if they don't take the main characters and they do their own thing within the universe, that could be really successful.
Yeah. I've heard that, Warhammer 40K is coming soon as, like,
Like a
a
TV
series.
series?
Yeah, as a TV series,
Ooh,
and it's being ran and produced by Henry Cavill, the guy that played
okay.
Superman and The Witcher,
Oh yeah.
and
I'm looking forward to
apparently
his Highlander movie.
yeah, and apparently he is, very, very into Warhammer 40K.
Oh
It's,
yeah.
like, his
I
thing.
saw that interview.
Yeah. So I think it's good that they're gonna have somebody controlling this IP that has a vested, um, idea
A
into
passion
making
for
a
it.
passion for this. Like, hey, we're not gonna mess this up because if I mess this up and I hate it, then I failed essentially because this is my thing. Like
Mhm.
I'm really into dirt bike racing. It's my thing, and like I would love to see more movies that are centered around some of like there was supposed to be a movie made about a guy named James Stewart in like the night, and I guess it was the early 2000s that they were supposed to make this movie. And he was like the first like successful black motocross racer, and he's kind of changed the sport in a major way with a different style and a different way that he rode the bike. And
Okay.
like some producer who was into motocross kind of like pitched the idea to, somebody with money, and it ended up getting to Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise was like, "Oh, we have to make this movie. Like this guy is just such an interesting person, and like the sport is a small sport but like needs to be bigger and seen by more people. For some reason they've just never been able to transcend the genre in a lot of ways. Like, you know, there's millions of people that watch NASCAR that have never sat in a race car in their entire life.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's millions of people in this country that own more than one dirt bike. Like it's something like, you know, 30 million people or something like that own a
It's big, yeah.
motorcycle. Yeah, but most of them don't watch the races at all, and that doesn't really make any sense, you know? Like
Mhm.
I enjoy a lot of sports. Well, not so much anymore, but like I used to enjoy a lot of sports that I never played or wasn't really good at. Like I was never great at football, and I kind of stopped playing in high school when I realized that I was playing more out of peer pressure than like for love of the game, and that I enjoyed racing dirt bikes a lot more. But I watched football for years. I worked in a sports bar and I watched a ton of football, and I don't really watch it anymore for like reasons of like corporate interests. And like I lived in San
Oh, no, I
Francisco
get
for a
it.
few years, and like they had a great team while I was living there, and then the GM got into a big battle with the coach, and the GM got rid of the coach, and the team went to shit. And it's like at some point I really wasn't watching a team. I was watching some rich assholes hobby. And it's like the players come and go, and it just kind of lost its luster for me. But like dirt bikes, it never has. And you know, it's interesting to have people who are into things that are, have enough juice in Hollywood to kind of make something, happen. Whether, it's Warhammer 40K or something like Mass Effect, like you were saying. And video games, I think the future is kind of in video games as far as entertainment goes, because people are still buying those. They're
Oh yeah.
buying them, way more than movies. And I think they cost more to make than a movie now at this point, because the worlds have gotten so big, and like CGI and all the stuff, it's gotten so crazy that like I think it's definitely possible that that IP is gonna be something that's gonna be transferred into movies in the future way more than books were in the past. Like, a lot of
Oh yeah.
the great sci-fi movies of the past came from books or existing IP that was maybe comic books, like even Alien, Predator, 2001. Oh, I guess actually 2001 was written after the movie, so that doesn't really count, but still a great movie. But a lot of these, you know, great movies of the past were, comic books or graphic novels or something like that, but I think in the future, we're gonna see them coming from the video game realm.
Oh yeah. I could see that. And some of these bigger ones, I mean, it makes perfect sense to make TV series out of them. For a lot of the people that don't want to sit down and actually, play the game on a system, they just want the storyline. That's perfect for them.
Another problem though is like I have a 13-year-old stepbrother, and it sounds like your kids might be a little bit younger as well. And they don't. My stepbrother does not have the attention span to watch a movie. He just has no interest in it. He's so used to shorts on the phone, or I don't know what it
Hmm.
is about these kids, but they have no interest in watching movies. And I try to tell the guy, I'm like, hey man, like someday you're going to have a friend group or a girlfriend that's going to have watched a lot of these old movies, and you are going to have zero pop culture references because you refuse to sit down and watch any of this stuff.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so I was at my daughter's orchestra recital yesterday, and she's middle school. And at the beginning, they were talking about sixth and seventh graders. And so the teacher turned around on the stage and she was like, "Get it out of your system." And the entire group of them just went 6, 7. And I'm like, oh, I'm just like, I do not understand the 6, 7 thing.
I have
And
no idea what you're talking about, to be
oh,
honest.
God bless you then. God bless you. But that is their internal meme now. Like from elementary to middle school, they say 6, 7, and it's just like this weird craze now where they have to repeat it. And it's like a weird verbal meme, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really mean anything either. Like nobody understands really what it means. It's just like a trigger to say it. And so like they're like, we're allowing them to say it once, but then nothing. Nothing.
I
Oh man.
I was lucky enough to know my great-grandparents as a kid, and,
Hmm.
like, I was talking to my buddy about this the other night, but, like, dude, they grew up on farmsteads, no
Oh yeah.
electricity, no nothing. They were persistent, they hunted, they fished, they grew their own crops, like, they didn't have cars, and by the end of their
Hmm.
lives, they had microwaves and satellite TV. And, like, there hasn't been a generation in the history of the world that has seen more technological change than they have.
Oh
And,
yeah. Easy.
you know, that being said, like, I think by the end of our lives, we're not gonna recognize the world around us, whether it's
I don't
technologically
recognize it
or
as it is.
yeah, technologically, culturally, like, I don't think we're gonna have I think we're gonna see a ton of change as well, like, some of the technologies that are coming down the pike, people might be living
Hmm.
in space by the time we die, and one of the cool
Yeah.
things is people are living longer and more fulfilling lives in their older years. Like when my great grandparents died in their 80s, like they looked decrepit, And now my grandfather is 90 and he looks like they did in their 60s, And
Hmm.
like at least for us, like hopefully we'll live long enough to see what happens.
Well, I am interested, just because now Elon Musk is trying to really push inhabiting Mars,
Yeah,
and so I'm like, there's a lot that's going to go into that. But I would love to be able to see that happen within my lifetime. I think it's fantastic because then we're one step closer to the Star Trek Next Generation era of thought process.
sure. I'm not super fired up on Mars. Like I think it's going to be a lot harder than people give it credit for. Like
Oh, it's
to,
going to be astronomical.
like one of the things that always cracks me up about like especially it's like environmentalists do this a lot where, you know, we're going to destroy the earth and everything's going to die and climate change is going to destroy everything. Meanwhile, we're going to terraform Mars. It's like, hey, guys,
Yeah.
if if we can't control the weather on Earth, there's zero chance
Mhm.
that we're terraforming Mars, you know? It's a million times easier to live on Antarctica than it is on Mars. Like just
Oh, yeah.
not even close, you know what I mean? And so, like, I think that we're actually gonna do a lot more habitats, like, in low Earth orbit, where you're gonna have either orbiting rings or, you know, kinda like the Halo in Halo, or you're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
have something like an O'Neill cylinder from, Rendezvous with Rama, and, like, I think that that's going to be a lot easier in the near future, and one of the cool things that's gonna kind of lead to that is we've been talking about it lately on the show, is that like space-based data centers are like actually almost feasible at this point. And believe it or
Oh, yeah.
not, like from an electricity standpoint, it's probably going to be physically easier and maybe even faster to scale up artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence in low orbit than it is going to be on the ground, especially in countries like America, where it's just so hard to build electricity, power plants, transmission lines. It's very difficult to do that here in the United
Oh, yeah.
States. Like people very like seriously underestimate one, like how terrible our infrastructure grid is today. Everything's falling apart. We don't have the workforce to fix it, let alone scale up at the rate that we need to incorporate things like cryptocurrencies and, artificial intelligence. So like going up into space is clearly going to be the move in the long term. Like you said, like new
Mhm.
worlds and, the new frontier, the final frontier. That's what it was. And,
Yep.
it's within reach within our lifetimes. I think that we're going to have some serious infrastructure in orbit. And like the cool thing about data centers and manufacturing in low Earth orbit is that it's instantly profitable, you know?
Yeah.
Like, when I had my hand amputated, my surgeon also did, he did amputations, but he also did transplants, and I was like, "Well, what about a transplant for me?" Like, "I'd like to have a new hand, like, maybe that would be better than a prosthetic," and he's like, "Ah, no, you don't want a transplant, like, you're too young, you would have to take rejection drugs like you're on like you're an AIDS patient for the rest of your life, and
Mhm.
it's not a good move for you," and I'm like, "Well, like, who do you do them on?" He's like older people, like older people that don't have a ton of time, like that they get in an accident or have some sort of genetic disorder. And I'm like, well, what's kind of the point of that? Like at that point, wouldn't you just give him a prosthetic and say deal with it? And he said essentially like he's doing them for practice because he thinks that by the end he was a younger guy, and he thinks by the end of his career that we're going to be able to grow or 3D print a human hand out of our DNA that you can transplant on immediately without having to deal with rejection. And like one
Because
of
it'll be your own genetics.
Exactly, exactly, and they can
Interesting.
always already grow every portion of the hand separately that they would need in order to 3D print a hand or grow a hand. The problem that they have is like a scaffolding to get
Yeah.
everything to grow together on and like getting it to grow into a human hand rather than just some tumor or amalgamation
Yeah.
of something that's supposed to be a hand.
It'll be
So
like that intro when they first make the girl in Fifth Element.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, like, one of the ways that is theoretically, like, going to make things like that possible is space-based manufacturing, where you can 3D print something in 0 gravity, so you don't have the problem of, like, gravity pulling down on everything, and it's
Mhm.
it's an interesting thing, especially, like, you get into computer chips and maybe, like, neuromorphic computing with AI where if you were capable of making, higher quality semiconductors or higher quality metamaterials that are really hard to do here on Earth, like you could make something that is very expensive, that has a niche purpose to it, but is very valuable to the company that needs it. And, everything we've done in space up till now, aside from satellites, has been, and even satellites aren't really that profitable. You've got a couple of private companies that are, putting them up for cell services and GPS and stuff like that, but for the most part, like, satellites are controlled by governments where they're
Yeah.
just stealing tax money to put them up there, and, like, for something like manufacturing and data centers, those are instantly profitable. And like data centers are easier to do up there for a lot of reasons. Like you can deal with the heat problem. Like the majority of the energy that goes into data centers is cooling. But when you're up in orbit, you're you've got a solar array facing the sun. It gets sun all the time. You don't have
Oh
to
yeah.
worry about nighttime, and the sun is like 80% more intense up in space than it is down on Earth. So you're capable of
Easily. Yeah.
generating more energy. And then on the backside of that, array that you've got built, it's near absolute zero. So you're capable of cooling the entire thing without having to worry about all of this massive cooling structure and water that goes into cooling down here on Earth. So, like, now you've got something that's profitable and a business model to create more of something rather than, having to steal money from American people and convince Congress and all of this other bull crap that goes into I was watching a video about space on the internet recently. This was a couple of months ago. And it was about NASA. And like I think NASA should just be dispersed and gotten rid of immediately. Like maybe they have a little bit of a purpose for small projects, but essentially like if billionaires wanna learn about things in space, they can spend their own damn money as far as I'm concerned, like like
Yeah.
Elon Musk is
I mean,
doing, you know?
SpaceX, I think, is primarily everything that NASA does now is all SpaceX.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, let's just get rid of it. And anyways, like, somebody left this comment that was like it was just, like, really loving NASA and talking about how profitable NASA is, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, NASA has never done anything that's profitable." "Well, you wouldn't have a cell phone without NASA." It's like, "You don't know that." Like, maybe they created some of the technology that went into a cell phone, but most of it was probably created by DARPA here on Earth, and, like, it's not NASA doesn't make that profitable. That's technology that is kind of shown to the world that other private companies can look into and make their own products that they can sell to
Yeah.
people. Like the thing is not profitable and it's never going to be profitable unless you can find a foothold. You know, one of the theories about how like NASA or any of these space industries could be profitable would be like helium-3 mining, where you could mine helium-3 from Jupiter or the moon that you could use for fusion reactors. But like as far as I'm concerned, fusion reactors are still a long way off,
Oh,
especially
yeah, yeah.
helium-3 reactors, because helium-3 reactors burn at like I don't even know how many hundreds of millions of degrees, like 180 million to 200 million degrees. So you're going to
I'm
need
not sure
even
we have the technology to contain that, so
exactly, exactly, like, we're having a hard time with 90 million degrees for DT fusion, let alone H3 fusion, so, like, that's so far down the line that it's not even something worth considering as a reason to keep NASA going, but I think
Yep.
that, it's gonna be interesting to see what these artificial intelligence companies do in low orbit in near future, I'd love to
Right.
see once we're up there, maybe we can start making carbon nanotubes and graphene at a higher rate, and we can print one of those space elevators straight down from orbit. You anchor into something big like an asteroid, and then you just drop a cable down to the equator somewhere. And now even your rockets aren't that necessary. And price per kilogram to launch something up into space goes from hundreds of dollars to tens of dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
is
interesting thoughts.
we're getting close to done. Is there anything else you want to tell us about your books?
Well, I mean, I've got the 2 that are out and about now. They're available in paperback, hardcover, audiobook, and ebook. And book 3 is on schedule to release late summer next year. It's going to be subtitled Echoes. Series is planned as 5 books, and hopefully that'll continue on without too much interruption.
Very cool. Is there an audiobook version of these yet, or are you just
There
print
is.
copy? There is.
Um,
Excellent.
so both of the books that are available now were done by Sean O'Leary. He did a fantastic job voicing them, and he's already agreed to work with me on book three so that the audiobook can come out the same time as the launch date of the paperback.
Very cool. Has it been harder or easier selling copies than you thought it was going to be?
Marketing is absolutely atrocious. I
I
hate
bet.
it.
I
But
bet.
the book actually is doing quite well. Book one, of course, is doing a little bit better than book two because everybody has to get through book one first. But I'm pretty happy with how sales have gone. So, yeah.
Good. I'm happy for you. Like I
Thank
read a ton of books on Audible, and it seems like this space has changed a lot in the past couple years.
you.
Like I used to look at reviews and go, all right, if it's less than, 5,000 reviews, I'm not even going to mess with it. And now it seems like even some of the authors that I really enjoy, their books aren't getting 5,000 reviews anymore because there's so much to
Oh,
offer
yeah.
on that site. Like I think early on, you know, in Audible's history and with audiobooks, it was only the most prolific writers that could afford to have an audiobook made. Your James Pattersons, your Michael Crichtons, you know,
Oh,
these
yeah.
these great writers. But now even, guys like you that don't really have a huge market immediately are capable of having an audiobook made because there's so many more readers now that
Oh, yeah.
narrators that are capable of doing it for a price that is reasonable enough that somebody who's not selling a million copies a year can still go, I want to have it done. Like for me, I love audiobooks so much, like it's my thing that I would be
Hmm.
willing to, if I ever finish this book that I'm writing, I would be willing to pay the money to have the audio version of it made just because, like, I want to see it done to completion. And to me,
Oh, yeah.
like, I feel like audiobooks are the new way that people are consuming books the most. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. Like, have you found that, like, are you selling more audio copies or more physical?
Ebooks are the lion's share of the sales.
Interesting.
Um, and then it will go from that to the in-person events at my booth. So like mostly paperbacks with a few hardcovers, but the audiobooks are beating the hardcovers in sales.
Are you doing
So
any
and
like sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead.
Are you doing any like Comic Cons or any like what type of live events are you doing?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of the book fairs here locally. I'm in Blue Springs, Missouri. And so I'm like the Lee Summit area, Kansas City area. And then over in Springfield, Missouri, last year and this upcoming summer, I'm going to be at Tremendicon. So it's sort of like a Comic Con, a little bit smaller in scale, but they are growing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Are you more of like an introvert or an outrovert?
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm actually more uh, extrovert because I
Extrovert.
like to
I
talk
said
to people. I
outrovert.
like to bring them
I'm
in.
tired. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
I can't pronounce anything today.
But yeah, no, yeah, I like to talk to people. I like to engage them. I like to let them know about the book and what's happening and how they can enjoy it and what it's about. So
Has it been kind of hard? Like, I feel like marketing with books, it's very difficult, especially with a fiction book. Like with a nonfiction
mhm.
book, it's easy to kind of discuss the ideas within the book in a condensed fashion to where you're not really giving away the whole thing and you're
Yeah,
still giving people like enough information to where they can buy the book and not like have it spoiled or anything like that. Where
yeah,
with nonfiction, you kind of have to walk this line where you don't want to give away the story, but you have to give away enough about the story to where you're
mhm,
going to get people interested. And a lot of times, like, it's more about selling yourself, like making yourself interesting to the audience, especially on like a podcast where, like,
oh yeah,
my goal for you is to get the audience interested enough in you as a person to go, I want to see how this person thinks and how they write and what type of world they've been building. And I would imagine for somebody that's more introverted, it's difficult to kind of do this type of promotion.
Oh yeah. So I would say that for me, the one thing I do is I generally give my spiel on when I'm doing an in-person booth event, like where we meet Ethan and he inherits the device. I'll generally have this at my booths, and I'll point to it, and I'm like using it as a prop and be
Yeah.
like, he inherits this device. He enters in the code. He's trying to figure out what it is. When he meets Summer, who's doing an investigation of her own to find her missing brother, they team up, and the device pulls them into an alternate dimension that's technologically a century behind. Uh, Unfortunately, this dimension is also being taken over by an evil regime. So now they got to figure out how to survive, how to save the brother, and how to get home. And this has them on the path to a lost city they have to find. That generally will bring people to be like, oh, and sometimes it's just as quick like an elevator pitch of being like, oh yeah, it's a sci-fi dystopian Indiana Jones.
Mhm.
And they're like, what? And they generally don't see that anymore. Like the Indiana Joneses, the Uncharted's, the Tomb Raiders, they kind of died off for a good portion of time, and they're finally starting to come back. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to make these stories. But um, yeah, and then like for instance, this last summer I was at a gaming convention. I'm one of two book vendors there, and most of it was all like retro video games, and trying to convince a gamer that they should buy a book instead of a retro game, that was difficult.
Yeah.
um, and I would say that what I did best is I was like, I gave the spiel, and I'm like, but I want you to tell me after you've read the book how many 80s and 90s references to video games and movies that you can tell me that you found after you're done reading it. So I made reading the book itself a game, because there are so many like different hidden like references and stuff throughout the series. So
Very cool. You know,
yeah,
another thing that's kind of been making a comeback recently is like choose your own adventure stories. And I feel like
yeah,
something with, alternate dimensions or alternate universes, like there's a real opening for something like that in the near future, even with audio. Like you could, like, I think it would be cool, you know, when you're dealing with something like alternate timelines or alternate, dimensions or something, like you could have this choose your own adventure thing and you give people really like 3 or 4 stories within one because you can go back and go, "Okay, I went this direction last time and I'm going to take a left turn instead of a right turn," and
yeah.
that's something that's going to be possible. And like I think we were kind of discussing earlier, with artificial intelligence, like people who are visual, in nature, you can not only have this version of a story, in audio or on paper that you can kind of see come to life. Where there's a ton of books that I've read in the past 10 years that I would love to see come to life. That
Oh yeah.
we're not far off from being able to just pump your manuscript into some sort of AI engine and having it create short vignettes or stories that can kind of, you know, tie into the book that you're building and you can see these characters come to life, which is, I think, a very cool aspect of the story.
Oh yeah. I think it would be as easy as, you input it into the AI, and then all you have to do is tweak the
Yeah.
visuals a bit for how you meant for them to look.
Yeah,
And that would be
exactly.
basically it.
Yeah, exactly. I read a book a while back, drawing a blank. Blindside. It was by a guy named Peter Watts. And the book had like just all of this really cool aspects, like truly terrifying aliens. Like very rarely do you read a book or watch a movie anymore where the aliens are terrifying. They're all very human in nature for the most part.
Yeah.
Even Predator, these are bipedal aliens that basically think like us. They have a different culture than we do, but essentially they think a lot like us. We're like in this book, these aliens were truly alien, just weird
Oh yeah.
things, and somebody at some point went on YouTube and created their own like fan 10-minute version of the book into a video, and they did a great job. Like
Oh
you got to
nice.
see these things. You got to see the vampire who was the captain of the spaceship that was going to explore this, new alien spacecraft that was discovered on the outer rim of the solar system, and you got to see these aliens in real life, and you got to interact with them and see how they would sound, and it's like, ooh, it makes your skin crawl just hearing them say some of the things that they say and interact in the ways that they do, and like, to me, like, there's that can add so much to a story.
Oh yeah,
Well, Nate,
those visual.
it's been a pleasure talking with you. I'm glad to meet you. I wish you
Yeah,
all the success in the world, and I'll send you my email, and next time you've got a new book coming out, feel free to shoot me an email and come on and tell us about it.
sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, man. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good one.